This is the Military Bottom Line Podcast, episode 57.
One of the few things that never gets old, like diving the ship is probably the coolest thing you do. Obviously, I was a little nervous coming out of that huge maintenance period where I had seen like physical holes in the hull. Hey, I hope these holes are patched up well or it's going to be a rough day.
Welcome to the Military Bottom Line Podcast, where we learn from veterans and those currently serving how to make the most out of a military contract. We're here to motivate, inspire, and help you leverage your service to positively impact you professionally, personally, and financially during your military career and beyond. What's going on, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Happy summer. I know for many of you, it might have already been summer for a while now, but up here in New England, it feels like summer just arrived. So we're stoked up here, finally getting out of that winter slump. So I'm pumped up today. My gas is pumped up. It was awesome connecting with Matt Kilby and just hearing his story, because I don't have any experience with submarines. I don't know anything about submarines. All I know is from walking through World War II era museums and like the submarine museums. And so to get a modern look of what it's like to live on a submarine was pretty awesome. Matt started his military career by going to the Naval Academy and ultimately volunteered to go be a submarine officer, where he ultimately would find himself living on a submarine without going to land for up to 110 days, which is just like crazy. I'd probably go crazy. So it's cool to hear his experience, and he does a great job like telling a very cool story towards the end that you should definitely stick around for, because it's these kinds of experiences that you're not going to get anywhere else other than the military. And so I really appreciated that story. And he also provides a lot of like nuggets for those that are thinking about, one, how to transition when the time comes, and what opportunities, what programs are there to take advantage of in order to get into a top tier school like MIT. Matt's now been out of the Navy for just about 2 years and graduated from MIT with a master's in business and a master's in mechanical engineering. So wicked smart guy. He has a lot to share, a lot that we can learn from, and I definitely recommend sticking around. So I hope you guys enjoy this show. What's going on, Matt? How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm stoked. You are the first submariner guy I've had on the podcast, and that's a perspective I have never heard before. So I know I'm excited. Hopefully the listeners are excited for this one. So it's awesome to connect with you. And we just connected the other day on Instagram. So it's been a very quick turnaround. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely quick. And I'm excited to kind of reveal the curtain into sub life a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Let's kind of start from the beginning, a little bit about like your upbringing and kind of what made you join the military in the first place.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Northern Virginia. And a lot of people like think that I had like a huge military family, which was not the case. Like, I think some served, but mostly, my dad was a firefighter for like 38 years growing up in Arlington County. So like right by, Pentagon 9/11, that whole thing. And I was like did pretty well in high school and was actually like a fairly good high school baseball player. So had some Division I opportunities leaving there, and the Naval Academy was one of those options. And, I just think that decision at the time was very difficult, but, ultimately decided to, go to the Naval Academy and commit at least 9 years of my life to serving. I'd say that, a lot of that was probably because of, seeing the sacrifices my father made. But, that's kind of what's got me in was kind of the baseball aspect. Obviously it's a great school and the ability to serve my country. And it was kind of just hit the trifecta, and, I guess the rest is history. Spent a great 4 years there.
Yeah. So I assume the decision was difficult because like that 9 year commitment was hanging over your head. Was that the most difficult part for you?
Yeah, I mean, I look back and you're 18 years old, like all your friends are, going to like state schools, they're going to join fraternities, you're kind of having like a ton of FOMO at the time. And I had other like opportunities as well. So I think, yeah, it was very difficult to like see all my friends like go down that kind of path that they were going down, and to take a wildly different one was extremely difficult at the time. But yeah, the 9 years it's hard. It seems like forever at the time, when in reality, it flies by.
Yeah, no kidding. So 4 years in the academy, and then you had an obligation of 5 years of active duty service afterwards.
Yeah, correct. So everybody owes, at least 5 years. And the service commitment varies depending on like what you service select. So, pilot service obligations don't start until they get their wings. Sub guys, guys and gals, it's right when you graduate. So gotcha. the timer starts.
Okay. Yeah. That's not bad. I know for the Naval Academy, you have the option of the Marine Corps versus the Navy after graduation. It didn't sound like you were like gung ho about one or the other when you joined. Like you didn't join to be a Marine Corps officer or anything like that, or a naval officer. So how did you ultimately make that choice to go Navy instead of the Marine Corps?
Yeah, so that's a good question. They really break it down into just different service assignments, right? So you can just join in the Marines is just like going to be a pilot, because you can be like a Marine pilot as well. So I guess for me, I was just never really interested in like Marine ground. I thought about Marine air. I thought about Navy air as well. But when it came down to like my decision criteria for submarines, I really thought about it in two ways. And that was one, the ability to further my education, like going to nuclear power school down in Charleston, South Carolina. Like really, essentially you earn a master's in nuclear engineering, which the nerd inside of me was really excited about. And two, the ability to, I think serve on like a small team. Like submarines are inherently smaller than most commands in the Navy. So I think the baseball aspect of kind of the team sport, I felt really rang true within the submarine force. So those were really the reasons I went submarines, and decided not to go any of the other service selections, including the Marine Corps.
Gotcha. So I guess I didn't know that you had the freedom to pick specifically which job it would be. So you had every officer job in the Navy available to you, and you said, I want to be a sub officer, sub commander, whatever it would be. Yeah.
Essentially, you can break it down into like getting very granular, like restricted line or non-restricted lines, like right, like supply corps. But essentially, yes, you have everything that you can pick from. But it's also, like the needs of the Navy as well. So, for example, it's going into your senior year, maybe it's like summer of your senior year, you put in your final preferences. You essentially list like, hey, submarines 1, pilot 2, Navy SEAL 3, whatever you're gonna rank, and then it's near Thanksgiving they have like a big reveal, and you find out kind of what your career is going to be.
Cool. I know for me, picking subs would be like this massive mental, barrier. Like, I don't know, to volunteer to go live in a sub and live that kind of life, which is very unique. Was there much of a hesitation knowing like you're going to live in a metal tube under, sea level for however long at a time kind of thing?
Yeah. I think I tried not to think about it, to be completely honest. Okay. I had a lot of friends going submarines too. Like we were kind of just like, we're all in this together, but, they do screen for stuff like that, like claustrophobia. They ask you have like all these questionnaires you have to fill out, to make sure that you would be like psychologically able to handle it. And I had only been on a submarine for 24 hours ever. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And of course, when you're a college student on the submarine, they're trying to make it seem like awesome. Oh yeah. So they're pulling out all the bells and whistles, probably the best food, like watching movies. I was like, man, this is awesome. And then, obviously that was not really the case, but definitely it got me excited enough to select it. So
that's funny. So what does that pipeline look like? So 4 years of the academy, what did you end up studying? Anything relevant to your career?
I studied mechanical engineering. You can say that was relevant, I guess, but I think the cool thing about the Naval Academy is you can major in English and be a helicopter pilot, right? Yeah. You can major in English and be a submarine officer. Like, it doesn't matter. But yeah, me personally, mechanical engineering, which did it maybe help? Like, I probably, there's some classes in the pipeline, which you just asked about that I think the Mechie background helped with.
Cool. And then, so you picked subs and you end up in Charleston for how long is that sub school? I mean, what, like, how many schools are associated with being a submarine officer?
There's too many. It's like so everyone first goes to Charleston. Like, everyone goes to Charleston. And that's nuclear power school. And that's at least like 6.5 months, depending on, when you actually start classes. And again, it's like master's level studies in everything from thermodynamics, electrical engineering, nuclear physics, stuff like that, right? You're just like nerding out all day, every day. People just spend so many hours in that schoolhouse studying.
Wow. Were you enjoying it, or were you like, man, just like get me to work kind of thing? I mean, you just graduated 4 years of college, and then they send you right back to, an intense classroom.
I know, right? I think I thought at the time, I was like, oh, I'm getting paid to do this, right? That makes it better. And I don't think it made it a ton better. I mean, it's a lot of information, right? But we tried to make the most of it. And like, Charleston's a fun town. And I think you try not to take, you take it seriously, but you try not to take it, too serious. Sure. Like, there was a quiet study room, like, those big headphones, like people we use on construction that like totally blocks out all the noise. Yeah. There's a quiet study room at the schoolhouse, and people will like go in there to like cram for this test, and it's silent. Like, you're not supposed to talk, but they'll like still put on these like huge headphones, just in case the dust in the corner makes a noise.
I'd be hearing my tinnitus at that point.
I know, right? Like, you just get lost in your own thoughts. Yeah. We had a buddy go in there, and this is like probably my favorite moment, is he goes in with the original like Apple headphones, think like the white ones with the normal plug. You're not allowed to have your phone in there, so you just have the headphones and an Apple. Puts the Apple on the desk, and he plugs the headphones into the Apple. And like pretends to just like sit there and study. And I'm telling you, all these people are just staring at him like, what is wrong with this kid? And it was like the funniest thing we'd ever done, like seeing these people's faces. But yeah, I mean, all jokes aside, 7 months of like really hard studying. Not everybody makes it through. But it really gives you the foundation for like how nuclear power works. And then from there, you can either stay in Charleston for like, it's a hands-on, the next 6 months are like hands-on. So you go to a real nuclear plant, whether there's like certain submarines in Charleston that have been like cut in half, like basically chopped up, and it's like just the engine room. Cool. And then you can go to upstate New York, where they have like a land-based nuclear reactor that you can do the hands-on stuff, start it up, shut it down. So you do that. It's like practical for another 7 months, ideally. And then you finish off with submarine school, which is in Groton, Connecticut. And that's like 10 weeks long. And that's all of the actual submarine stuff, right? Like sonar, like how does sonar work, like the very basics, just to get you started before you show up to the boat. So overall, in an ideal world, I think takes a little over a year. For me, it was, pushing 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Just based on, delays and equipment breaking.
2 years. So you got 6 years worth of schooling for free, and you only owed ultimately 3 years. Like,
yeah, I mean, technically, yes. Technically, that's true.
That doesn't sound like a bad trade-off. Obviously, there's a heavy price, I guess, within those 3 years. But financially, like the comparison of like going into debt to pay for a private university or something like that. Right. I mean, you were able to graduate debt free with a pretty decent paying job right out the gate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great thing about the Naval Academy is you graduate, student loan debt is crippling America, right? So I think you get the opportunity to graduate debt free, which is an extremely unique and valuable experience. And then, power school was again an awesome time, and it's not an official degree that's awarded to you, but some colleges actually will accept those credits towards like a master's degree. So
cool.
Yeah, definitely got my nerd on for sure.
Awesome. So then what did your 3 years of operational Navy time look like? I mean, where were you stationed? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, so I was on the USS Florida for about 38 or 40 months. So we're a guided missile nuclear submarine. So basically, there's like nuclear missile submarines, and then there's the smaller fast attack submarines, right? They took 4 of those nuclear missile submarines, basically swapped out those for like Tomahawk missiles. And that was one of the submarines I was on. So very unique platform. Stationed out of Kings Bay, Georgia. So I want to go back for a second, because those that aren't in the Navy, I was in the Marine Corps, when you say you were on the USS Florida for 38, 40 months, that doesn't mean you were actually living on the submarine for 38 to 40 months. No.
Okay.
That's like my own place to live. Yeah.
That's the sub you were assigned to. Okay. Just to make sure everybody understands that you're not, that wasn't your prison sentence.
No, I don't think I would have lasted. Assigned to it for that long. We were in Kings Bay, Georgia. I mean, it's exit 1 in Georgia if you're going north. So I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and had a great time there. But yeah, I showed up and we were in, like a huge maintenance availability. I showed up to the submarine. It didn't even look like a submarine. Things were all cut out, holes everywhere, like big plastic tubes, like with air flowing through them, like slapping me in the face. Contract workers like pushing me around. I had no idea what I was getting into. And we were in that for over a year, probably 15 months maybe, because I got back right when I got there right when we brought it back. So I did like a qualification ride. So they'll send, junior officers in enlisted, they'll send them to get experience on like a submarine that's actually out doing things.
Yeah.
So they sent me on the USS Ohio, which was on the West Coast. So like met them in Guam and did like a little 2-month deployment with them. Got to do the whole West Pac, got to go see, pulling to Japan, pulling to South Korea, like very cool stuff.
Nice.
And then, came back to the USS Florida, and like immediately, now that I was qualified, like they were like, okay, you're ready to work now. So, as a new guy, you're stuck in the engine room because you had just completed all of that nuclear training we talked about. So
that's where you're
exactly. Yeah. You're the supervisor of the engineer of the engine room, essentially, as soon as you qualify. I mean, outside of like the engineer, right? Who's the 04, who's like the boss, you are, the day-to-day supervisor back there. So things get real quick, and you learn a lot really fast.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I'm just thinking like, I've been on, World War II era sub museum type things, and thinking about like the engine room. I imagine you've been on a older era sub. I think
I have. I think I went to the one in Baltimore. If it's still there, I think.
Okay.
If there's one in Baltimore, I definitely went on.
I'm trying to paint us a little bit of a picture, if you're able, of like what is it in comparison if somebody's been on one of those World War II subs. I mean, it's tight, it's cramped, it's like bare bones.
I don't even think you can compare them because those were so small. I mean, this submarine was huge, man. It was like 560 feet long.
Wow.
The diameter is like 40 something feet. Like it's a big.
So there's a couple stories. Like it's
there's like 4 stories, right?
Wow.
So it's massive. So the engine room is huge. I mean, it takes up like, the last third of the boat. And I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'4".
Wow.
There are a few places I can like stand up straight. But the engine room is one of those places where you can stand up straight, like pretty much anywhere. Like it is a pretty large space, with a couple main levels, obviously like machines buzzing all around you, piping, and things like that.
Wow. Do you remember the first time you went under? Was there what was that feeling like?
he asks us a lot, and I'm always like, I don't know if I really remember. I will say it's the one thing that I think never gets old. One of the few things that never gets old. Like diving the ship is probably the coolest thing you do.
Cool.
Obviously, I was a little nervous coming out of that huge maintenance period where I had seen like physical holes in the hull. Hey, like I hope these holes are patched up well, or it's going to be a rough day. So, I think there's like a little anxiety that first time, but you trust everybody you're serving with, and that's a procedure you practice very often. And there's like I said, there's nothing cooler than seeing the scope like go underwater and just disappear. It's a very cool feeling.
Yeah, that's wild. What I mean, when you're living on the sub and you're actually like out at sea, like day-to-day life, I mean, you're basically at work 24/7 until you go home. So, I mean, are you actually working 24 hours a day? Like, what is that daily routine like? And is there any opportunity to do like what do you do for fun on the sub?
Yeah, so we split the day into like 3 8-hour blocks. So you are assigned to like a shift, right? So if I was on day shift, for example, as like a supervisor, I would probably, I think breakfast was at like 7, maybe 7. So as a supervisor, you have to like get up and tour the spaces. So like if I was driving the ship, I would have to tour, the front, the whole ship, basically get an idea of like what's going on. Where are we going? Is there any equipment down? That takes about an hour. Then you show up to breakfast, try to like scarf some food down. And then you go relieve, the person that was on the mid shift so that they can go eat breakfast before the hour of breakfast is over. And then you're on watch for 8 hours. So again, that's kind of, I could be driving the ship as officer of the deck. I could be, the supervisor in the engine room, supervising the nuclear plant. I could be, a contact manager where I'm like working with sonar. So I would do that kind of operational job for 8 hours. And then you get relieved by the oncoming section. You eat, lunch or whatever meal is next. And then you do a post watch tour, and then you report, to the captain and say, hey, this is what I did for these 8 hours. This is the status of everything. And, captain might have questions, or he's like, okay, yeah, cool. Thanks. And then you do like your actual home. You actually have to do your work now. So any paperwork you have, or, maintenance packages you have to approve, like your actual paperwork job then starts. So It's a very long day. I'd say probably 14-hour days. I was probably sleeping like 5 hours on deployment.
Wow.
And then obviously it's the Navy. So what do they do when something goes wrong? Like they just wake people up. So you're always getting woken up to some breaks. Like, but essentially that's kind of like one day, right? Like then you would eat dinner and like go to sleep or whatever you wanted to do. Some people watch, movies or shows. Some people like play Xbox. Some people work out. Like it kind of, you have to be pretty intentional on what you like to spend your free time doing, just because there's not very much. Like me personally, I tried to work out like every day for an hour and a half because we had like decent workout equipment, and I just kept me going, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, they've actually have a gym on board, and
gym might be, gym might be, I don't know, quotes. So use air quotes there. Okay. I mean, we have it much better than one of the smaller submarines does. I'll be the first to admit that. We have 2 treadmills, a Versa climber, which is like one of those climbing machines, a Smith machine, like the guided bench press, adjustable dumbbells, probably 4 bikes, 5 bikes.
That's not bad.
So there's actually like a decent amount of stuff. Like I did the Versa climber every day. I tried to climb 2,000 feet a day.
Cool.
Like that was just my thing. But yeah, some people do other things, but I could never like row or run, because as soon as the sub like takes an angle, you're going from like running on a treadmill to running 4 degrees up on a treadmill, and it's just miserable.
I've heard that with when you're like lifting weights on a ship, and then the ship's kind of going the waves. and all of a sudden your 100 pounds becomes like either 60 pounds or 140 pounds. Like there's so much fluctuation.
It's kind of dangerous. I mean, for us, it's not as bad because when you're on depth, you're just kind of on depth, whereas we're not affected by waves, right? Like the surface ship's affected by waves. So I could see that. That's probably a bigger deal up top.
How many people are you, I mean, roughly how many people are you like competing for these, 6 workout machines with, like, is it difficult?
Honestly, I don't think I ever had a problem. No, I don't think I ever had a problem. I don't think like the submarine community is the most fit community in the Navy. So it was not like a bad thing. A lot of people, I think, they're just working so many hours that, you guard your sleep. So I never had a problem finding space, which was lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. What's like the ratio of officer to enlisted on a sub like that? I mean, is there like just you and like the captain kind of thing, or?
Oh no, I want to say we had 20 officers out of 175.
Wow.
So, whatever that math works out to, one in, I don't even know what that is, but
it's a decent number of you.
It's decent.
You're not like, the fraternization or whatever the military like is concerned about, but you have like other officers that you can, communicate with and like be friendly with, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Rather than being
and I think
enlisted.
I do think that like the submarine force in general is probably a little more friendly between the ranks than others, just because you're just stuck there with each other, and it's like you kind of have to be, which I love. So,
when out at sea, and like, what's the opportunity for either like communicating with your family or, for enlisted, if they're taking advantage, like, is there opportunity to take advantage of TA for you as officer or enlisted? Like, usually deployments and things like this maybe offer opportunities to do something with the downtime, but I guess if you're not having much downtime, then maybe not. But
I mean, to tackle the communication question, obviously, like all we have is email, so there's no like voice communications. And email is really at the whim of what we're doing. So if we can communicate, like if we can transmit signals off, if we can receive and transmit, then we'll get emails whenever. But if we are not able to do that for some reason, then you might not be able to send an email or receive for, anywhere from hours to a couple of days or even a week. So it really depends, which is tough. I mean, especially because you're out like 110 days without pulling into port. So it was like a really long time to
110 days
to not call home. Yeah.
Wow.
So and in terms of like taking advantage of those programs, I do think because of our schedule. So how it works is like we were the blue crew. So there's 2 crews. So like there's the equivalent of me on the gold crew. So like when we're out at sea deploying, the gold crew is at Kings Bay, doing simulators, doing trainings, requalifications, everything for those 4 months. And then, we actually would pull into Diego Garcia, which is like a 13-mile long island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Like my party trick is to Google Maps it and just keep zooming out because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And they would fly there. We'd pull in, we would swap, and then we'd fly home for like 4 months of, being at home time. So, it does give you some not downtime, but, some people like that schedule because it is different than like some of the fast attack schedules where they deploy for, 6 to 9 months. And then they might be home for a year, or they might go out for 2 weeks here. Like for us, it was like 4 months on, 4 months off pretty regularly.
I imagine that's got to be, I would think that'd be kind of difficult to maintain relationships through. Were you married at this time, or is it just you? So
I was,
you didn't worry about it?
No, when I showed up, I was single. My now wife and I met, probably like a year in, and we went through like 2 deployments together. So you'll have to ask her how it was back stateside. But I mean, it's difficult. You can't, just communicating, you know how hard it is to like communicate via text, right? Like you say you forget a period, or you put a period somewhere, like something's wrong, right? Like you can't, like that kind of stuff just like is not going to happen. You can't afford to let that happen, you know?
Yeah, because then not only did you like forget the period or throw in an extra period for God forbid, you then have to wait like potentially a couple of weeks to fix whatever came from that extra period, you know?
I mean, when we took the sub from Kings Bay, like over across the Atlantic, like over to kind of the Indian Ocean, we went through like a really bad storm, and we couldn't communicate for, I think it was like 8 days with no warning. Wow. So I remember Britt was just like, I have no, like, everything good? Like,
unreal.
Everything good? And I'm like, you know, sending an email or trying to someone every day. Like, by the time you get this, like, I promise, like, we just can't communicate. So it's, it's tough. I mean, I think people struggle with it a lot. It takes a lot of work.
What's, I mean, if you're at sea for, you said 110 days, I think, is that right?
Yeah, it was the last one. Yep.
I mean, are you going like, how much sunlight are you able to get, or is everybody just a bunch of vampires down there and like about to pass out?
We surfaced a few times during that 110 days. So, you know, as an officer of the deck, like you're up on the bridge driving, so you definitely get sun.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think we like bumped the pier once. So we technically went up against the pier and unloaded food and left. And I think we let everybody like go topside.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone tries to filter through. As soon as you surface, I mean, people are begging to come up there and like smoke a cigarette. So I think everyone tries to get their time.
Yeah. I didn't even think about the smokers. If they're fiending for cigarettes, like, I mean, I assume there's no smoking room for them in the
correct. There used to be like years ago there was smoking, but no smoking allowed. No.
Unreal. Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Which like always blew my mind, because I am not a smoker, but I would be I'd be driving, and you know, you get the request, so and so wants to come up and, you know, take a look about, quote unquote, and they come up and, you know, light up, and I would always be like, dude, like you made it 60 days, like, you just stop.
That's so true.
But it's fun. Like everyone just loves coming up. It's the coolest. It sounds so bad. The coolest thing about being on a sub is driving on the surface. So it's beautiful to be up there and watch. So I think everyone likes that too.
Is there, you know, you see movies or pictures from old eras of like people like sunbathing on the deck when they, you know, come up to the surface. Like, does that ever happen? Like where like there's numerous people chilling up top, or is it pretty much like, hey, go poke your head up and go back to work?
We never did like a swim call. Submarines do it though all the time. I mean, it just depends on your captain. I think if they are, you know, it's a risky thing to do, but if they want to do it, like they can do it. So yeah, I mean, I have had friends who like they surface that thing, take a lawn chair up, hang out, jump off, like swim around. So, you know, I was never able to experience that, sadly, but I've heard it's a pretty awesome time.
Yeah. That would be, I don't know, very like surreal, like be out in the middle of the ocean. I can't see land for in sight. And you jump off the side of a submarine and it's just like this massive sub and then thousands of feet of water right beneath you. Like that's pretty spooky.
Yeah.
You know?
It is kind of spooky when you think about it. Yeah. Definitely would have been fun. I mean, maybe next time, I guess. Probably not. But.
Yeah. In another life.
Yeah, another life for sure.
So how did your career, you know, play out, and like what made you ultimately decide that you didn't want to stay in? Like, how did that transition point go when you made that mind up?
Yeah, that was I mean, man, that was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, because I truly loved like everyone I was serving with. I mean, we had a great crew, great people. I loved driving a submarine. But when I really like sat back and thought about like, what does a submarine career look like? It didn't involve a lot of the things that I love doing. Like the higher up you go, the more lonely it gets. The higher up you go, like you don't drive the submarine anymore. That's a junior officer or department head job. And it just I felt like the fun wouldn't be there. And I felt like I could have a bigger impact kind of on the world from the outside. So And you know me, we've already talked about the nerd inside me. I wanted to like go back and like get a master's degree and pursue that. So yeah, I made the decision in late 2018 to drop my paperwork and apply to business schools, and kind of just shoot my shot and see if I could get into one. And if I got into one, I would be able to, you know, get out and just go to school. So I'd say it was probably not typical. Most submarine officers will at least do a short tour, right? You do like your 40 months or 36 months on the sub, and then they usually like quote unquote reward you with like a shore duty, like very easy job, right? Like
Gotcha.
9 to 3 for 2 years.
Yeah.
With
the expectation of you going back to sea, or could you just end your career at that point?
You could just end your career at that point. I do think statistically most officers sign on to be department heads on shore tours. So I think their theory is like if they can get you to shore tour, they might get a better chance of like getting you back onto a sub because you forgot about the terrible times.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I just didn't want to kick the can down the road for 2 years. Like if I already knew I didn't want to stay in, I wanted to just like get out, get the degree, and like start my new kind of career earlier. And I felt like those 2 years would have been, I don't think there would have been a lot of value add there. So that's why I decided to get out right at my 5-year point. Whereas a lot of my colleagues will do 7.
So yeah, I was going to ask that because if you go to the academy, from what I understand, you do not rate the GI Bill unless you do 7 years of service following the academy.
It's actually 5 years and 90 days.
Oh, okay. All right.
Which when you hit the minimum GI Bill.
The minimum.
Correct. Yeah. 5 years, 90 days is like I think like 40% or whatever the minimum is.
Okay. 7 years to get 100%.
Maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, I had no GI Bill getting out.
Was that kind of like, you know, knowing you want to go to grad school, was that kind of like in the back of your head, like, man, do I like what's my mode of, you know, funding this dream? Like how much did that weigh in your thought process?
Yeah, it was a huge part of it. Yeah, I think a lot of people like go to these MBA programs and like take out a lot of debt. And I think at the time I was okay taking out some. You know, you could be a TA. I was like, I can make it work. You know, do TA, see if I get a scholarship, see if I can apply for third-party scholarships. So I think like at the time, the financial aspect was in the back of my mind, but like they weren't going to let me extend for 90 days. Like they just weren't going to let that happen. Like I was either going to have to do like 2 more years or this like 90 days. So
gotcha.
Again, I just kind of went for it. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to like get some help from the school I went to. And, you know, I was a TA when I was there and kind of, I joined the reserves.
Okay. So
I still drilled once a month. I did my 2 weeks active duty last year. I think that was a way to kind of, you know, take out less loans. I tried to be creative about it. But yeah, no doubt, like the GI Bill would have been pretty helpful, but you know, I tried to problem solve my way through it.
Sure. So you ultimately decided to stay in the reserves. Was that a decision before you got out, or like once you were out, you're like, let's like kind of like keep my foot in the door? I mean, when did you decide that?
So I got out May 31st and started school June 4th. So I was like
of 2019.
It was 2019. It was like a quick turnaround. And in order to affiliate with the reserves, you have to do it right away, or else like if there's a gap, you can't have a gap between active duty service and reserves, or else you have to like apply from scratch.
Gotcha.
If you roll it into reserves, you're like, it's much easier than applying brand new. So I just rolled it right in. Like once I did the math on kind of the financials, and not to mention, I think, you know how it is, like the military almost becomes like part of your identity, right? You wear a uniform every day. This type of people you serve with, you just like, those are your people. And I felt like the reserves was a good way to transition out because I would still be able to have that sense of community and everything as I made that transfer. And I'm really glad I did it. You know, the reserves are funny. It's like everything administratively wrong with the Navy packed into 1 weekend a month, but it's still like fun to get out there and talk to people about what they did during their careers and everything. So yeah, long story short, glad I did it.
Yeah. I say that a lot too. It's like the reserves, imagine the inefficiency of the military, but then they only work 1 weekend a month. So that everything takes that much longer.
Yeah. It's a disaster, but it was fun.
So are you still in the reserves?
No, I actually stopped a week ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did transferred to the IRR because my job starts in a couple days, and I wanted to just like fully commit to that without the reserves kind of hanging over my head. Nice. And I think like you get 2 months or 2 years where they can't mobilize you, and mine had just expired, and I just didn't want to get mobbed like right when my job starts. Like didn't want to get off on the wrong foot. So.
For sure. So from what I understand, I mean, on the enlisted side, I don't know if it's the same as the officer. When you're going from active duty to reserves, like you have that obligatory IRR time after your active duty time. So did you have a non-obligatory reserve time in there where you could just drop it anytime you wanted, or how did?
So technically, Naval Academy, again, it's 5 years active, but there's actually an 8-year MSO. So I still have 1 more year on my MSO. So you can serve it through the IRR. So I'll have 1 more year of the IRR required to fulfill that.
But when you went reserves, you didn't have to commit to 2 years of reserve time. Like you kind of just kept going until you wanted to stop.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I think that I don't think that it's very well explained to people that like you can try the reserves after you leave active duty, and there's no obligation to it. Like you can just any day you want can just drop to the IRR, which you'll be in no matter what. So like
right. No, I think it's a win. It's like a no lose thing to try it. I think I actually had a guy I served with, an officer on the submarine, text me like right before this podcast about the reserves. He was like, wait, so I can just join and like stop whenever? I'm like, yes. Like it's literally, there's a no lose situation. If you click a button in NSIPs to get out, like it's very easy. So I think it's a great transition tool, especially with, again, like you get out, you just lose that sense of community. And I think that can hit people very hardly.
For sure.
So I think it's a great way to kind of stay involved.
Yeah. 100%. And then not only like, still having your foot in with the community, there's also a sense of like security, like you can still use TRICARE, you still have access to, bases or different programs and such. So it's like, you might as well try it for a little bit. And if it sucks, then, cut
absolutely. Or if, worst case, something happens to your civilian job or something falls through. I mean, you can activate. I also have a friend who was in the reserves and recently just reactivated and went on like 1 year orders to Italy. So like,
wow,
I think it opens a ton of doors. It can be a good fail-safe for sure.
Yeah. Did the reserves give you any financial help for your grad school?
They did not. No,
they did not. Okay. So what did you ultimately do once you transitioned? What was that transition like for you? Like mentally and emotionally, because it like you said, like it weighs on people a lot, kind of like cutting from your community and all of a sudden you're on your own kind of thing. So what was that transition like, and what would you recommend people do in preparation for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was fortunate because I went to an MBA program that had like a veterans association, right? Like a bunch of vets who had just gotten out, who are at business school, who had just done what I did, right? Like people to talk to. And, if you're a vet. So if you see someone else who served, like you immediately have something in common with them, right? It's just like easier to talk to. So I think I was fortunate to like have that sense of community ready for me when I got out. Cause I don't think I knew like how weird it would feel to not be in anymore. I mean, it was 9 years of putting on a uniform every day and like, like Matt Kilby, he's like the Navy guy, like he's in the Navy. Like that was, again, it's part of your identity and that's just gone. Like one day it's just gone. And I I don't know if I know the right answer of how to prepare for that besides just like looking yourself in the mirror and like kind of knowing that that's going to happen and planning for it. So, I think my advice is just find a sense of community, try to like find, local networks. Are there any like veteran groups in the area you're living to? Does a company you're working for have like a veterans affinity group? I think like doing some research like that, I think would really help as well. Because I know a lot of companies out there have those like veteran affinity groups that you can get plugged in with, talk to other vets, and they can help you through the transition as well.
Yeah. 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 I mean, ultimately, like you don't have to be part of the military community forever, but like just finding a community to associate with.
Exactly.
Is the most important
and
part.
For me, I tend to like, I think relationships are extremely important. I think relationships take work. And like, since I've gotten out, I've had like multiple hour-long conversations with like my fire technician, like chief from the sub. Like I just called him, he was in Hawaii. We like talked for like an hour. And it's just like, but stuff like that takes effort. It takes kind of both people wanting to like talk and reconnect. And I think that's something you take for granted when you're in the military too. It's like, oh, like everyone's come to work. We're stuck on deployment. Like once that's all gone, you're gone. Like you're not, they don't see you every day. Like in order to stay plugged in, you got to call them, you got to reach out. I mean, I just think that goes with life in general.
Yeah. It's almost like relationships. I don't know, maybe this is case by case, but I feel like relationships in the military are almost effortless because there's so much time to like talk, and get to know each other. Whereas as soon as you get out, like, most private companies aren't paying you to socialize,
Exactly.
So it's really hard to make the time for building and maintaining those relationships, and you have to be like super intentional about it. And so
I totally agree. Yeah. We all too often let time or busyness get in the way.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point, is like just staying in touch with the people that, you were good friends with before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did you end up going to your graduate school?
Yeah, so I just graduated from MIT. I went and did my MBA there, and then I did a master's in mechanical engineering as well. So
awesome. Congrats.
Common theme here of just like being a nerd. But yeah, thank you. It was a blast. Great 2 years. Boston's a fun town. And it went by very quickly. So
was it, how did it compare? I'm curious, like, how did it compare in workload from like the academy and then like, the sub pipeline? Like, was it a grind or was it enjoyable? Like, what was that like?
I think it was a grind, but in a different way. Like the material, it's not like anybody could get through that material. But what's difficult is, one, getting in is the hardest part. I think two, there's a lot of things that want your attention, right? Like I had homework due. I had a networking event. Like I had friends that wanted to get drinks. Like, I wanted to network with them. So like I had a new fiance. Like there's a lot of things kind of trying to get your time, and it's very stressful to, one, like say no, and two, prioritize. So I think I had to learn like pretty quickly, how to prioritize. And then I had to reflect on what those priorities were in order to get through, because I mean, FOMO is just so real. Like if I was doing homework and my friends were all out at the bar, pre-COVID at the bar, you're like, wow, damn, like I should have just, I'm going to pass anyway. I should just go. Right. Like so stuff like that. It's just different. I never used to have a calendar. Like, the plane of the day is like posted on the boat. Just roll in the morning, go, okay, I have something at 10, something at noon. Now you're opening your Google Calendar every 10 minutes to make sure you didn't miss something. So I think that has been a big shift as well.
Yeah, that's really funny. Like time management in the military is created for you, and so
absolutely.
It's not a skill that you really gain from the military. And so if you're not proactive in creating that skill for yourself, then it'll be difficult.
Yeah. You don't have someone yelling at you, telling you where to go. So maybe that's what I need. I don't
Did you find any programs or anything that helped you either get into this, graduate program or MIT, or fund your education there that other veterans or service members could take advantage of?
Yeah, I would. One, like if you're interested in applying to not even just business school, graduate schools in general, reach out to the school's veterans clubs, right? Like reach out and just talk to them, see what it's like, how they get through the application process. Everyone is happy to help. Two, there's a program, Service to School. So it's service and then the number two, school, which is a free mentor, like a mentor site that will help you apply to undergrad, grad schools, everything. Like I'm a Service to School ambassador, so I help veterans apply to business schools. Like I get paired with normally nuclear submarine officers applying to Sloan, MIT. And I will help them through their application, their resume, and things like that. So that's a free service. There's also a bunch of good, like new kind of like, I hate to say it, like meme pages on Instagram. Like there's a few of those.
Yeah.
Sit reps, right? Like I think that's how I found your page, right? Like he's like got a lot of great information. He's got a website, Discord, like all that stuff is very helpful. And I don't think maybe it was around when I was applying. I didn't know, but that I think is a really good tool. Because the more people you talk to, I think the more it makes sense. But there's so much out there. Student loans, I think that is extremely daunting at first. I used a company called like Lever Edge. Now they're called like Juno, but they basically negotiate a rate. Like they get a bunch of people to like sign up, and then they go to a bank and they're like, "Hey, I have thousands of MBA students. If you give up, what rate will you give us? And I'll give you all these students." And then the banks bid, right? It's really smart. Like a Harvard Business School guy created, like then the banks bid, and whoever gives the lowest rate, like gets all the business. So that, because I was thinking like, oh, Navy Federal, I'll apply for my student loan. Like Navy Fed came in like 2% higher, like which is a lot of percent when you're dealing with that much money. So that was like a great site as well. And again, that's just stuff I learned by talking to more and more people and hearing their experiences. So I think that's like my biggest advice. And there's a ton of people willing to help.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a unique idea. Lever Edge or Lever's Edge.
Lever Edge, but now I think they've rebranded to, I think they're called Juno. Juno student loans. Joinjuno.com. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's super good to know. Because and that's the kind of creativity that I feel like sets people apart. Some people might just go to Navy Federal or they'll just type in Google and take the first thing they get and 8% or whatever. Like, sure, let's do it. I'll get a great job afterwards.
Exactly.
But I mean, like you said, that 2% when you're talking about $100,000 is going to make a significant difference over the years. So and
there is a federal loan too, right? Normally, I think when I applied, it was at 6, which is still not. I think it did not beat what I got on the private market. So you just got to do your research. I mean, it will save you money to do your research, and
even 6% is pretty pretty significant.
What
would you say your favorite opportunity through your military time was?
Man. Yeah, I think for me, back in 2017, so every submarine has a diving officer on board, like a scuba diving officer. And I showed up and they're like, "Oh, you look athletic. You were a college athlete. Like, we're going to send you to dive school." I was like, "Whoa, I don't know how to swim. I know how to swim, but I'm not good at swimming." Okay, I don't care. You're going.
Wow.
I was like, okay. So I got to go to dive school, trained a lot for it because I was not comfortable in water. I went through the 6-week course out in Panama City,
cool,
where they teach you how to dive. They beat you up underwater, drown you, all that stuff. And it was a blast. But doing so kind of allowed me to do some really cool stuff on the sub. Specifically, I mentioned that we have Tomahawks instead of nuclear missiles. We also have like a little garage on the back of the sub
Mm.
that can host a SEAL delivery vehicle, like a little mini sub that, Navy SEALs can do whatever with. So when we were kind of practicing for that mission set, I was like the ship in charge from like the submarine perspective.
Mm.
Off Coast Key West, awesome.
Oh yeah,
we were there for a month just messing around, and they let me do a dive with them. So like the submarine's at periscope depth, and we're literally on the back of the submarine, like at periscope depth, like diving with these. I don't know. Do you scuba dive?
I've got my cert. Yeah, I've been a number of times, but I'm not like.
So you have like a bottle on your back, but you're actually breathing off a hose that's like connected to the sub. So it's infinite air, right?
Yeah.
I'm watching them kind of like, bring the vehicle down, bring it up, like drive away, do like a little figure eight, come back. Very cool. 4-hour dive. I was freezing by the end. And you go through like the same process every day. You do that. They bring it down. We all go into the shelter. We switch to the bottle, and then we all go to the surface. So we like bail out, and we're going to the surface, and you see just this huge submarine. Like, you see the big prop like go into the darkness, just
wow.
As you go to the surface. We all go to the surface. There's like, I don't know, 12 of us maybe. Mm-hmm. We're all kind of like holding locking arms. And the waves are great. It was like 7 foot wave. We were getting smoked. The guy next to me's like throwing up. He's like, this Navy SEAL's throwing up. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've been sick too. The little rib comes over, starts like chucking water bottles at us. Like, hey, drink water. Meanwhile, the sub drives away at periscope depth, does a U-turn, comes back like directly at us. And then when we see the periscope, but certain distance away, we just dive down. You basically dive down, go head first into the sonar dome. You see this big building come out from the dark at you. Swim under, the big fairwater planes. You swim under those, and you grab onto the shelter, swing back in, and then you're like hanging on. And then they do like a mini emergency blow. They blow. They basically like half surface the ship, so like all the water rushes out of the shelter. We're still like hanging on. We shut the door, isolate the valves, and then the sub dives deep, and we just crawl back down into the hatch. Like it was like out of a James Bond movie, man. It was so much. It was so cool. The visibility is like, it's like I could see the prop. It was like 500 feet, beautiful waters. So much fun, man.
That's gotta be one of those things where it's like, so I got my scuba cert because I have like a phobia of what's under the water, but there's definitely like the unknown that like creeps me out, And so
it's so creepy.
Yeah, so creepy. So I can't imagine being underwater, not being able to see the bottom, and like all of a sudden like this, like you said, building like just kind of comes out of
it's terrifying. It was so scary. It was the next day. Thank God I was diving the next day. The next day, we've got cameras mounted so you can kind of watch everyone and there were sharks. There were like not big sharks, but there were sharks like circling, and they had to pause everything until the sharks went away. But I was like, oh man, I would not have had a good time.
Yeah.
So glad I got mine out of the way. But yeah.
Did it make you wish you went SEALs at all after having a day like that, or not so much?
I'm sure grass is always greener on the other side, right? Like I'm sure that was like the millionth time they've done that. So it was definitely cool to be a part of. Not sure I could do that lifestyle, but those guys they were fun to have on board. We had a lot of people on board for that, and it was a lot of fun.
Cool. Awesome. Would you recommend sub life?
I would. Yeah. I think, and depends on how you look at the military. Are you looking at the military as, well, I don't know. I think sub life has set me up for the life that I'm living. I think my decision, one, to go to the Naval Academy, and two, to join the submarine force is absolutely a pivotal point of my life. So I would recommend it to everybody. I think you make amazing relationships. They do pay you extra to be in the submarine force, so there's a financial incentive. and you just learn. I mean, you have so much to learn. Not to mention, it's like kind of cool to talk about when people ask, right? Because people are always like, "Oh, tell me about a submarine. How many windows are there?"
Yeah.
So it's fun. And in terms of the military in general, I mean, it's the best decision I ever made. So I'm very fortunate that I was just given the opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you? I mean, what's your job that you're moving into? Is it anything related to military or submarines or that kind of technology? I mean, is it carrying you through your lifelong career in some capacity?
It's actually, I don't think it really is. I just joined a management consulting firm out of their DC office. And, we work with clients in a bunch of industries. So, is it possible to maybe do a defense project? Yeah, absolutely. But, me personally, I don't think it is. I didn't actively seek submarine related or defense jobs. I think I still want to learn other things, things I don't know about instead of do things I do know about.
Yeah, I like it. So. Awesome, man. Well, any parting wisdom or lessons learned to the listeners that might be thinking about going Navy or going subs or anything like that?
Oh man, I think we talked about relationships. I think maintaining relationships is important. And I think just remember the good times. There's always going to be terrible times, but the good times are what you're really going to remember.
Yeah.
I had a lot of bad times on the sub, but I couldn't give you an example right now. I could give you an example of a bunch of great times I had. So you're going to remember the good times and just have fun. It flies by.
Yeah.
Do it and reach out if you have questions.
Sounds good, man. I will make sure that your social media is linked here if anybody wants to reach out for questions.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, Matt. Dude, I really appreciate that story and the perspective given there, because I had never had anything to do with subs. It was just kind of this ghost thing that existed. So to get that inside look was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm glad I was able to share a little bit. Appreciate it, Jason.
Thanks so much, man. Best of luck in your new career.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Matt. Matt is a awesome dude, super bright, super successful, and I really appreciate his perspective on the Navy, the academies, and the submarine life. If you have any questions, whether it be for submarine life, Navy life, Naval Academy life, or transitioning and trying to go to a top tier school like MIT, definitely reach out to him. His social media, Instagram link will be in the description. He's a wealth of knowledge and resource, and I would definitely recommend reaching out to him if you have any questions. I would really appreciate it if you're not already subscribed to the YouTube channel. There are multiple resources there talking about VA benefits, talking about lessons that I've learned. And I'm only going to continue putting stuff out there. I know it's a little bit inconsistent right now, but it will become more consistent. And I'm putting out every benefit I find that I find worthwhile. I'm making a video on it for you guys to learn from, and hopefully for you guys to take advantage of. So definitely check out the YouTube channel. All right, guys. Thanks so much. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.